and welcome to Tech Trends. I'm Olayemi Oshidende, and here's what we have on the program this week. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and as our world becomes more digital, the need for strong leadership and smart awareness has never been greater. So first, I'll be speaking with Professor Fene Osakwe, cybersecurity leader and Forbes Technology Council member, on how we can all build a culture of digital safety in the age of AI. And it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It's a period that puts global focus on how individuals, organizations, and governments can better protect themselves online. And there's growing concern about how prepared we really are for the kinds of cyber threats we're facing today. So from where you sit, how would you describe Nigeria's level of awareness and readiness?
Thank you. Once again, thank you for bringing me back. I think Nigeria is like a family with 36 children, and they are all adults, and they can do absolutely anything they like. So it's a difficult one to look at Nigeria from one lens. Now, I think one way to actually measure Nigeria's progress, thankfully, I have been in this field for over a decade, and I can tell you that things have gotten better. 10 years ago, when you mentioned cyber in Nigeria, the only prefix that comes next, or the other word that is attached to it, is cafe. It was cyber cafe. These were the things that people spoke about. Now there's a lot more awareness. People understand the risk. People understand. People are protective of their passwords. People know it can be stolen. They kind of understand a bit about the implication if it's stolen. Are we where we should be? Absolutely not. But I think it's also unfair to just say, "Oh, cybersecurity is not advancing in our country." I think it is. I would just say that while places like the CBN and financial service industries are driving a lot of maturity there, I think healthcare also needs to come up, aviation. So I think there are other places we can improve, but I would say that we are getting better.
Oh, well, and we'll come back to some of those later. But, it's been established that cybersecurity isn't just about, the technology itself. It's about people and leadership, like how we say people are still the weakest link. So when we say that, we emphasize the awareness, right? But why does human error remain such a big risk, even with all the awareness campaigns and tools available now?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be the case forever. And it's simply because, for example, here's my mobile, yeah? At night, I could go to bed and just allow it automatically update. That update comes with certain security enhancements, and so it makes it a lot more cyber secure, right? Because some of those enhancements come with fixes to security vulnerabilities. Humans cannot be updated. So at the end of the day, regardless of the technology you have, regardless of the massive investment you've made in processes and tooling, the organization or the nation will eventually come down to the level of security awareness of the people. So the people will continue to be the weakest link simply because you cannot pull them out of a network. You cannot do all those things that you leverage technology to do. The antidote really is still a lot of awareness, and a lot of awareness. And I think that this is how culture is built. You just keep emphasizing, re-emphasizing. And I think now we need to move from awareness to training. But yes, I think this is where we are now.
Yeah, so this just emphasizes how far awareness can really go. But now, from a leadership point of view, how can organizations move from simply training their staff? I know you just mentioned that to actually building a culture of cybersecurity. Where every employee feels responsible for safeguarding the company's digital assets.
Okay, so you know what? One way employees are not going to feel responsible for safeguarding the organization's digital assets is when there's a cyber attack and you sack the chief information security officer. What you've just said is, hey, that's the man who was in charge. You are not responsible. Because now we are beginning to see a lot of heads of cyber, we're beginning to see a lot of chief information security officers losing their jobs, and gradually, especially in the West, the role is really no longer something people are looking forward to because it's almost like the job of the football coach. It's higher and fire now. And that's simply because I think leadership has not been able to properly cascade down what the roles and responsibility are. I mean, look, like you said, leadership. What are we talking about here? If we're talking about really establishing leadership, you're simply saying, how do we influence one or more people towards a goal? We need to be able to cascade down from the board. This is the job and this is the expectation of the board. We need to set the strategic objective. This is where we want to be in terms of cyber management. We need to hold you accountable. This is what you need to do. Staff, all the way down to the person who comes in on the first day, we need to be able to articulate this is the expectation from you. And I think that that's the way there's a collective vision. I think that that's the way collectively teams can work together and not just simply leave the responsibility on the shoulders of one person. It will not work.
Well, Fene, still on leadership itself, many still see cybersecurity as an IT department problem, but you've spoken before about how it's really a leadership issue, and you've just explained part of that right now. What does effective cybersecurity leadership, look like in practical terms?
Oh man, I wish you had 7 hours. Okay, let's go. I could talk about this for a decade. So interestingly, that's what I was even just touching on. That cybersecurity leadership, your ability to influence one or more people towards a goal. Cybersecurity, how are we able to protect our information assets, right? So how are we able to influence one or more people to properly safeguard our information assets? I think just having that understanding tells you if you're talking one or more people, then you cannot be talking about the CEO for an organization of 7,000 people. It simply now means that there has to be a way to cascade down that leadership. And I think that cybersecurity leadership, first of all, for me, starts with setting the tone at the top. In this organization, do we take cybersecurity seriously or not? This is where I think the role of the board comes in. The moment that is set, then I think you then cascade down to management. You hold them accountable to the level the board has set to say we must make this level. And then it now cascades down to employees to explain to them what their role is and what their responsibilities are and what the consequence of their actions are if they do not take cybersecurity seriously. In a very brief way, I think that's holistically how to look at it.
Well, Fene, you currently chair the Lagos State Cybersecurity Advisory Board. You're a member of the Forbes Technology Council. You're a professor of practice in cybersecurity. What has that, as the experience, shown you about how government and the private sector, how they can work better together to strengthen Nigeria's cyber resilience? And what do you think we still need to do more, perhaps in terms of policy, coordination, or even implementation?
Yeah, thank you. So yes, I'm privileged to chair that board. I think what does it show in terms of what we can achieve from a public-private perspective? I think it's magic. I think that when you take, so for example, we have two professors of practice in cyber in Nigeria. Those two professors are on this board, and we have someone who used to be the chief information security officer for the city of Atlanta. So best of brains, right? And I think that if you take those expertise, when you take the expertise from the private sector and you combine it with the will and the reach of the public sector, I think it's magic. And I think that that's thankfully what we are beginning to see in Lagos State. I also think that there's a lot for both to learn from each other. There's the part about how public sector works, which I think a lot of people from private should get in and understand that. And I also think that there's the agility part from private that public sector could also benefit from. Just in terms of how I think all of that benefits our country, I think the potentials are enormous because we are beginning to see a lot more Nigerians involved in not just even cybersecurity now, but just different parts of tech. And I think that when Nigerians in the private sector do not only complain about the public sector, but try to get involved, and Nigerians in the public sector are willing to partner with the private sector, I think it's only better for our country.
Well, of course, Fene, the public-private collaboration conversation has always been a major one in the ecosystem. But Away from that, one of the big disruptors today is, the almighty artificial intelligence. It's helping cybersecurity teams detect and stop attacks faster, but it's also being used by criminals. How do we balance that, and what ethical lines should leaders be mindful of when using AI for security or surveillance?
Oh gosh, you are touching on topics I am passionate about, and we do not have a lot of time. So,
Sadly.
AI in cyber, I think when we talk about, you're very correct, it's a two-edged sword. In June, for example, the EU, the European Union AI Act goes live, which means now it's going to be enforced across the European Union. What that what an act like that is saying, and I'll bring it back home, is saying that look, there are certain things we are not allowed to use AI to do. Okay, they are called prohibited. Then there are certain things that are high risk. Okay, and for this high risk, you need to have guardrails to make sure that there's traceability, there's auditability, there's transparency, and things like that in the AI model. And then there are low risk, and then there are middle risk. The importance of that is we need to set limits on there are certain things you are not allowed to use AI to do, which is thankfully what an act like that does. And I think that we could also benefit from that in our country because one of the so one of my clients was talking recently about how they used an AI model to pull CVs for job candidates to be able to do some sort of analysis for a particular role,
Mhm.
and someone eventually picked up that they found out that consistently the model was churning out only male candidates. So somehow some bias in when they trained that data had been built in that for some reason it was only picking out male candidates from a pool. These are things that are high risk. And so these are things that, again, you need to set guardrails, human in the loop, things like that, to be able to make sure that while you allow innovation to thrive, you allow innovation to thrive with appropriate governance.
Very true there, because while AI has come with so much benefit and making things way easier for us, we also have to be on the lookout for the bad parts as well. Uh, Now, there's also the personal side of cybersecurity. I mean,
All right.
for the everyday Nigerian watching this who may not, have all the fancy tools, what are, like, let's say, three simple things they can start doing today to
Mm.
protect themselves online? Especially, we have digital scams, we have phishing, and all of those attempts continue to rise.
Yes, I think the first place to start, and thank you for that question, because what does this mean for the ordinary person?
Mhm.
I think the first place to start is you are the target. I think that's where we all need to realize that. Not your organization, not you are the target. And let me quickly talk about three things every average person could do, even without a dime. The first thing is many times when you try to log into your computers now, or your email rather, you would see WhatsApp, Instagram. It's telling you activate multi-factor authentication. Why? Because your password alone is no longer enough to keep you secure. So there has to be something else you use to authenticate, which means something else you use in gaining access to your account. So please turn on your multi-factor authentication. Lime, I was watching a video in New York. They were asking, this is because I'm going to the second point. You said about three.
Mhm.
They were asking people on the streets, and they said, just randomly, hey, what's your password? What do you use for your password? And then one lady goes, oh, my daughter's name and my birthday. And I go, oh, you must have a beautiful daughter. And she says, yes. They go, what's your daughter's name? Her name is Kenny. Ah,
Oh
Kenny, are you
my.
birthday mates? She says, no. And then they say, oh, so when's her birthday? She tells them, when is your birthday? She tells them, and then they tell her, so your password is this. And she goes,
Because you've unveiled everything, you've revealed everything.
exactly, exactly, right? But this is how it works because you are not supposed to use passwords for things like your birthday, your pet's
Hmm.
name, your kids, things like that, because they are so easy. To your question again about why humans will continue to be the weak link, they
Yeah.
are so easy. We're emotional people, you will always pull these things out. And I think the third thing, which I think is also important, do not stop your phone, do not stop your laptop, do not stop your mobile devices from downloading updates. Many times, those updates are actually security patches to try and mitigate certain vulnerabilities that have been found in those software. So those are the three things I would say.
This has been such an insightful conversation with you, Professor Fene Osakwe, member of the Forbes Technology Council. It was such a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.